So hello and welcome along to the Adair Academy in Conversation With, and a big shout out to all the listeners on the Actors Toolkit podcast. Today we are joined by John Gower and Paul Mawhinney from the Mocap Vaults in London. How are we doing, guys?
Great, thank you. Good to be here.
Very well, thank you.
Fantastic, excellent. So we'll start off with the same question that we ask all our guests. Who are John Gower and Paul Mawhinney?
Shall I start, Paul? My name is John Gower. I am a director. I started out as a film director, and then I started working in video games 15 years ago, and have been hooked ever since, really, and got to work in motion capture, which was completely new to me at the time. So these days I spend my time working in TV, making short films, particularly developing a film, a movie, but also working on several video game projects as a cinematics director. And then the other thing to say is that I formed the Mocap Vaults with Oliver Hollis-Like, who I'd worked with on a James Bond game back in 2012. And we agreed at that time that there was no training for actors, animators, and directors to work in mocap. We'd had no training ourselves. We had no real guidance as to how to transfer our skills from film, TV, and stage into motion capture. So that's why we wanted to form the company.
Excellent. And Paul, how about you?
I'm an actor. My background is in performance. I trained at a drama school back in Australia, moved to the UK in 2015, which is where I met John and Oliver. I did a training workshop with the Mocap Vaults and very quickly worked out how much I love it as a performance medium, and it kind of became my speciality. And for the last 7-8 years or so, I've really been focusing my skills in that area, both as a performer, a teacher, and a director.
Fantastic. Okay, so for those of that don't know, what are the Mocap Vaults, and what kind of things do you guys offer?
So we formed the company in 2014, as I say, for the reason being that we identified that there was a real lack in the industry of both an understanding, but also some kind of framework, foundation, kind of just some kind of way of getting the information to actors, what it was to work in motion capture and performance capture. So we formed the company with that expressly in mind. We have a 4-stage curriculum, which takes our students from an introduction to actually being in suits, working in cinematic scenes in a motion capture studio. We don't pretend to be a drama school. What we are is we hold signposts up saying, you need to think about this if you want to work in motion capture. These are the things that really are crucial. And we'll sort of outline that hopefully in this conversation, but that's essentially what the Mocap Vaults is there for, is to improve the quality of performance in motion capture, which I think we've been doing. And we work all over the world, at least the US, Canada, some countries in mainland Europe, Sweden, Germany, and Poland, and yes, and we're just hoping to get the word out as much as we can.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm assuming that most actors on the listening to this podcast will know the difference, but do you want to explain for the people that don't, what's the difference between motion capture and performance capture?
Yeah. The motion of a performer's body, whereas performance capture also includes the facial expression and the vocal performance. So it's often referred to as full performance capture, as it includes those 3 elements, where body mocap only includes the body capture.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that it's important that most actors are trained in motion capture, or do you see that as being the future of the industry, the way things are going? Do you think it's like an essential part of training for actors?
I personally think it can't hurt another string to the bow. I might be a bit biased in that it is my preferred performance medium, but it is certainly on the rise. The entertainment industry is using a lot of motion capture, both in film, television, and certainly in video games nowadays. And I think that potentially drama schools are doing a disservice to their students if they're not at least acknowledging this as an emerging performance medium.
Mm-hmm. Jamie, yeah. I'd take that further and say that it's essential. I mean, you know, it's really clear that the games industry is much bigger than film, television, and theatre combined. In a world where students may well have come out and gone straight into doing things like rep, you know, these days that sort of that is, I'm not saying it's withering away, but there are less opportunities. But certainly there are more and more opportunities coming to animation, voiceover, games, and the whole knowledge and understanding of how digital and virtual production is changing the industry is really important, I think, for people to get their heads around. But I think there is much more work emerging in this area, and we're both real advocates of a new way of thinking, and that we would really like to see drama schools taking motion capture and performance capture much more seriously, which actually, having said that, they are beginning to, which is great to see.
Yeah. And what would you say were the main changes that you've seen in the sort of industry when it comes to mocap since starting the Mocap Vaults? Is it more just the prevalence of it? There just seems to be more of it, or?
Look, the industry is really changing fast. You know, the way I sort of equate it, it's a bit like when movies went from silent to talkies. It's like that's happened in the last sort of 10 years. I'd say that in the last 10 years, mocap systems have got more accurate. Games have become much bigger. You know, they really are a very significant part of the entertainment industry. The relationship between the film, TV industry and games is much stronger. So there's much more respect from games in terms of understanding narrative. I think audiences are demanding more sophisticated narrative, stronger characters, and also we're becoming more diverse. You know, there are games much more aimed towards women, people of color. I just think there's a much stronger industry and a more diverse and a more, might I say, kind of kaleidoscopic. You know, there's a bigger world of work being made, and it's really changed. And the other thing that I would say is that if you look at cinematic scenes, they're becoming more and more like film and TV. So in some ways, there is a kind of, you know, there is a sort of synergy happening, which is really exciting. It's a really exciting time right now.
Yeah, I watched a webinar the other day that Spotlight hosted about the gamification of the industry, and they were talking a lot about viewers wanting more interactivity in the things that they're watching. You know, whether that be being allowed to answer questions or to decide which way the narrative goes. Have you noticed a lot of that kind of creeping in?
Do you want to answer that one, Paul?
It's the gamification is, I think, happening slowly in the film and television side of things, more so certainly than the what we'd call the interactive entertainment part of the entertainment industry, such as games. But you look at how people consume media nowadays, a lot of it is through phones and laptops and tablets, where they want to have input on what they're watching and comment on it and such. And I think that there is certainly a drive from audiences to get more involved in the media that they're consuming. And that is certainly very much in play when it comes to video games and the type of work that motion capture performers end up being involved in.
Yeah, I interviewed an agent a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the impact that AI is having on the industry, especially for voice artists, where there seems to be a lot of controversy around, being able to replicate voices and things through AI. Do you think that's something that might creep into the sort of motion capture world as well, or?
To a degree, it's already there. I mean, the software is being used to bridge gaps between live performers' motion that is being captured, and I think it's only going to increase in the way that it's being used and implemented in the industry. But in the same way that voice actors are concerned, physical performers in motion capture are concerned. But I think at the end of the day, fingers crossed, it's still going to be a long way off before AI is able to convey the depth of human emotion, especially in emotional extremes, whether it's high drama or romantic comedies, whatever it might be, the extremes of human experience. Whereas automating telephone receptionists for voice instead of using a live voice artist, or some of the more basic in-game animation that a motion capture performer might be asked to do. The quote unquote easier things will be taken over by AI, but I think there's still a lot of scope for human performance.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
Jamie, I think we need to have faith with our audience, because I think audiences ultimately will demand stuff that feels believable. I have a faith in that, and I think if you look at the times in the past when people have been scared that new technology is going to take over, for example, there was a time when movies were terrified that TV was going to take over. There was a time when, I'm sure the theatre people were terrified of what film and film and TV would do to take away their business. I think ultimately the audiences demand good work, and I hope that I'm right, that feeling that actually we've got less to fear of AI and maybe more to embrace with it and kind of take it on and see what it can do for us.
So not something to worry about at the moment, but perhaps perhaps down the line.
Yeah, well, definitely we need to be aware of it and keep abreast of it. But I'm less pessimistic than maybe others are.
Yeah. So you touched earlier on the 4 stages of the training that the Mocap Vaults do. How does the training work? So can you give us a breakdown of the way that the 4 stages work?
Sure. So we have an introduction class that Paul and I run, which is really pretty immersive, and it's a fast-moving day, which kind of takes you through all of the basic things that you really need to be thinking about with motion capture, which is really talking about gesture, because motion capture tends to be about full body, and so it's really about thinking about what am I communicating with my body. We're looking at sort of gesture and behavior, physical behavior. Then we look at working in digital environments. So imagine working in an imaginary environment. So you may well find yourself in a mocap suit in a studio which feels like a rehearsal room lit by fluorescent lights and with funny dots on your skin tight suit and cameras all around you and bored looking technicians behind computers, and somehow you've got to make it feel like you're in the middle of a jungle being chased by a dragon or whatever it is. So we sort of impress upon people that the need for that thought. Then we talk about the needs of the technology and the animation, and then we work on cinematic scenes, which is what we do at the end of the day. And so our curriculum then really draws that out, and we do a deeper dive into all of those things. So the first of our parts of our curriculum, the next level, is called Heroes and Monsters 1, which is about creating characters quickly and working out how you use your own movement heritage to create other characters. Because the thing about motion capture is it allows you to play characters that don't look like you and don't necessarily move like you. So how do you do that? How do you create those kind of characters? Heroes and Monsters 2 looks more at imaginary environments, and it's a really in-depth and a tricky skill set to take, I think, to understand. And that's with Gareth Taylor, who is Lecoq trained and used to be head of movement at Aura, and is a fantastic teacher. And then when we move on to our next level, we're moving towards cinematics. So we're moving towards working in a mocap studio in a suit. But we do a preparation class called Pure Imagination, where we get people to work with pre-recorded audio. As you can imagine, that's a pretty tricky thing to do. Mm-hmm. So you've got someone else's voice, you're inhabiting their physicality, and you're moving to that voice. And we also, in that class, we bring together the whole notion of creating characters quickly, working in imaginary environments. We do some improvisations in the morning just to sharpen ourselves ready for the afternoon. Mm. And then the second class in our third level, which is called Cinematics, we put actors in mocap suits for the first time in a mocap studio. We don't encourage that for the early part of our curriculum, because we know that it's an awful lot to think about with mocap before you put the suit on. And sometimes putting the suit on can really sort of deflect people, and they get kind of like, oh my God, I'm in a skin type suit. I'm in this weird place and suddenly I've got to act. And so cinematics tends to be quite a challenging class, because if you imagine you've got a head-mounted camera, which, as Paul said, is part of performance capture, you're asked to do a monologue first thing with a head-mounted camera and a suit. And then we do some ensemble scenes, and we do some working with pre-recorded audio in a mocap studio. It's pretty full on. And then the fourth level of our curriculum is called Enter the Volume, and that sort of puts everything together. It's a weekend course. Day one, we work with an animator. So we've been directed by an animator who will talk all about the kind of things they're looking for with a working mocap studio where you can see your character in real time on a screen. And then during that day, we're rehearsing the duologues that I'm directing on day 2. So basically, at the end of end of the day, you'll be ready for the final day's shooting of the duologues. And on Sunday, we shoot 6 duologues with 12 actors. They're specially written. They are very exacting. You're working with a head-mounted camera, a mocap suit. They're really intense. And the idea is that at the end of that process, you go out with a show reel. But I think by the end of our curriculum, the aim is that you've really gone through all of the main challenges that you may well encounter on a mocap set, so that when you arrive at the volume, mocap volume, you will arrive and not be bamboozled by what you're confronted with. You know, you'll understand what's been asked of you and why you're being asked it.
Yeah,
because it is an animated medium. It's a really important point to put across. It's an animated medium. It's not live action. It's not stage. It's something else. So there are characteristics of acting styles and requirements that are common to, as we know, there are links between stage and screen, but there are differences. And mocap again is different again because it has different requirements because it's animated.
Yeah. I think one of the concerns that some of the Academy members have is that, you know, a couple of them mentioned that they thought they were too old to do mocap, and they saw it as a young person's game. I know that that's a myth, but do you want to kind of reassure our older members that, you know, you're creating these universes, you're creating these, you know, stories with lots of different characters. So obviously you need realism in the movement, the shapes, the sizes, these kind of things.
Do you want to take that one, Paul?
Yeah, sure. 10 years ago, one performer would play many roles within a single project. Nowadays, especially in the last few years, productions have become a lot more discerning about getting the right person for the right job, and where versatility as a performer is still incredibly useful to have, especially in motion capture. The casting process is becoming much more rigorous and exacting in what they're looking for. And so if they're casting a role of someone 50 years or upwards, they're going to try and find an actor of that age bracket. Especially if it's a primary role. You might be asked to play multiple parts within the one job, but for your primary role, the role that you'll be playing the majority of the time, they're still going to be casting to type. And so, yes, there's very much room for performers of all ages in motion capture, through from young children through to the more experienced and senior members of our community as well. Absolutely.
Jamie, I think the important thing to impress upon your audience is you need to be a good actor. You know, that's kind of important. It's a funny thing when we tell our students that all that's being captured is your skeleton. There is a danger that they go, oh, that's fine. That's, you know, that I can sort of do anything then. Well, actually, the skeleton's a brilliant lie detector. You know, you can tell, you can discern tension, you can discern kind of a sense of fear. The emotions are really expressed in the skeleton, because the way mocap works is that a digital skin is then put onto the skeleton, and your skeleton drives that digital skin. So it still requires really good acting. So if you're a 50-year-old person who's still sort of fearful of mocap won't want me, if you're a good actor and you fit the part, you'll get the job. I mean, that's the way it works. You know, if it's just about, you know, you just need to be good at it. I think that's really important to impress.
And the other thing is that these roles do get subdivided as well. There might be multiple performers contributing to a single character. So they might have one performer that's doing the voice, they might have a different performer that's acting in the body for the cinematic moments, and then they might get a different performer, a stunt performer, to do the bit where they get blown up and roll down a mountain. So for the core acting side of things, they want people that are good, solid actors. For the really stunty stuff, they want great stunt performers. Sometimes there's some crossover, but nowadays they have the ability to break the roles down like that, and so they will, because they'll get the best of both worlds that way.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, cool. We'll move on. We've got some questions from members of the Academy. So these are from some people who've worked in motion capture before, some people who have done your training. And the questions that they have are as follows. So the first one, have you seen a transition to stuntmen doing a lot of the roles in video games, including the acting roles? You just kind of touched on there that, you know, really anyone can do it. But I think a lot of actors have this image that you have to be able to, you know, do backflips, or you have to be quite a physical performer. But obviously with performance capture, like you said, it's just about being a good actor. Do you find that a lot of, you know, stunt work managed to make that transition into motion capture?
There's something in the video games world called a locomotion shoot, or an in-game animation shoot, which is essentially all the character animations where a player is inputting controls into the controller or a keyboard. For those are very physically demanding shoots, and especially for action games, combat games, then yes, definitely you see a lot of stunt performers getting that type of work. But it's also a very specialty skill that you need to have incredible muscle memory and endurance, and in that respect, I'm seeing a lot of stunt performers getting that type of work. But at the same time, you also need to be able to convey character effectively just using your body. So if you can roll down some stairs and be hit by a car with the best of them, then great. But if you can also convey the internal life of a character, their emotional state, their intellectual state, their relationship to their environment, just through the use of your body, then you are infinitely more employable in motion capture as a stunt performer.
Jamie, I'd add that I've been working in the industry for longer than I'd like to admit, and I've noticed the change in stunt performers over the years. I think gone are the days when it was okay for a stunt performer to be just fine at, you know, being run over by a car. Sorry, I'm not trying to belittle stunt performers at all. I'm just saying that the physicality of the job and the ability to take hits and do combat, etc., is both in TV and film as well, is not really enough anymore. And so we've had people come along and do our courses who've gone, well, I'm a stunt performer, but I've been taking acting classes because I've kind of been advised by my agent that I should also get those skills, which I think is absolutely right, because it means that as a director, if I'm working with a stunt performer and I've got someone who I can't cut to in a mid-shot or a close-up in a film, it's a bit of a shame, because actually it'd be great to get a kind of decent, believable reaction. And so I think those acting chops are really worth getting if you're a stunt performer, and that extends to mocap as well. You know, if you've got someone who's really good physical wise, but they can also believably inhabit that role at that moment and react believably, you're just making yourself more employable. So I think definitely that I would encourage your anyone who's doing stunts to get some acting classes and take it seriously and go for it, because, you know, that's kind of what people want these days. I think that's the feeling I get. I don't know whether you agree as an agent, but that's the sort of feeling I get. And certainly as a director, I'm going to be much happier with a stunt person who's comfortable in front of the camera, you know, reacting to a moment or even having some lines.
Yeah,
because it means that then they're you know, there's more I can do with them and more they can do.
So covering all bases, yeah. So if you've got an actor who is both a physical performer and a vocal performer and a good actor, they're going to be more employable than somebody who maybe just has one of those skills.
So we advise people as well. There's obviously a lot of combat in video games, because video games are all about the player having control, and one of the ways the player has control is through combat, through fighting, through arms, through whatever weapons. Paul and I both took a weapons course with a company called Bear Arms, who were great. And you know, I think it goes the other way, which is, you know, actors also need to think about those kind of skills, you know, whether it's combat, whether it's stage fighting, whether it's weapons, any kind of way that you can extend your skills and make your physicality more believable is good. So it goes both ways.
Just to follow on from that, I'm a firm believer that life is short, and you could spend your entire life training additional skills and getting a little bit good at too many things. I very strongly advocate to pursue things that you are interested in, right? So if you're a stage actor and you're kind of interested in learning a bit of, go and do stage combat. But if you're not really all that interested in learning how to sing, don't bother learning how to sing, because you're going to be up against people that live for that, right? So you're going to be up against people that love to sing and also love to act. So pursue your interests wholeheartedly with everything you've got, but don't just learn an additional skill because it might make you more employable. That's my philosophy.
I think what most of the actors that we have are most concerned about is the casting process. So, you know, some of them have trained in motion capture, they've got all the skills. We have stunt performers, we have gymnasts, these kind of things, but they often get stuck with the casting side of it, because from an agent's point of view, there doesn't seem to be too many casting directors dealing or working with just motion capture. You know, there's the likes of Jessica Jeffries, these kind of people who do a lot of motion capture, but there's no sort of specific way around it. So I think most of our actors want to know, what's the best way to get cast in motion capture? Is it a case of, you know, networking with production companies, or are there casting directors assigned to these kind of projects? What's the kind of casting process?
You want to answer that one, Paul? It's always the question people ask, and of course they do, because, you know, I understand why they do. It's never an easy one to answer, but let's have a go, shall we?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it is a can of worms, but look, there are, as you say, people like Jessica Jeffries who are very good at their job, who know exactly what production companies, especially game developers, are looking for through the casting process, are very good at doing that. And those type of casting directors will give you a very specific brief. And so in the casting breakdown, it will say, you need to do this, this, and this, and frame it like this, and deliver it like this, so that we can see everything we need. But there are also some jobs that go through more traditional casting offices that mainly deal with film and television. And those type of auditions will be run like any other film and television audition. So you've got to kind of, I tell people, if the brief doesn't specify what they're looking for, but it does say this is for motion capture, I would give a full body shot, or at least a 3/4 shot, to show as much of your body as possible. If it specifies that it's going to be full performance capture, and they're asking for self-tapes, I'd give 2 tapes, one of the full body shot, one of a close-up, so they can see how your face performs in a close-up. Should you approach production companies directly? Nowadays, the vast majority of bigger projects, AAA video games, blockbuster films, are going through intermediary casting offices, right? So if you knock on someone's door or send them an email and say, here's my reel, I'm really interested in working with you, they're just as likely to say, go to the casting director. Studios used to have a degree of a say in who gets cast as well. That's somewhat changing nowadays, but I think casting directors, just like trying to book a job on film and television, it's getting to know the casting directors around the city that you're in, and making sure you've got a good reel that demonstrates your skills to the best of your ability, and doing a good audition. And that comes down, as John said, that comes down to being a good actor.
And Jamie, there is a network. You know, there's not that many mocap studios. There's the Imaginarium, there's Audio Motion, there is Centroid. These are the kind of ones that are out for hire. Audio Motion, in fact, are now owned by
Rebellion.
Rebellion, that's right. Yeah, and then other games developers have got their own studios. I mean, once you get a show reel, once you've done some work and you can put your work on Spotlight, and you can have a dedicated mocap reel, which is probably worth doing. Then at least it shows that you've got some experience, you know what you're talking about, and then you start to get known. You know, it's a hard thing to do, motion capture. To do it well, I would say it takes a lot of skill. Takes a lot of skill to be flexible and to have that sort of physical awareness at the same time as the sort of have the sort of psychological depth for when you're asked to do those kind of more tricky, more cinematic psychological scenes. So having a reel is good, getting known in the industry, building your network, you know, it's as hard as any other part of the industry. It's a little bit more mysterious just because it's still developing. But as Paul said, there are casting briefs going out. There are casting directors who are getting their head around what are the particular requirements of mocap. Jessica isn't the only person doing it. It's developing, but we can't pretend it's going to be easy, because it isn't. You know, it's just as film and TV and stage are not that easy in terms of getting the job. But yeah, I hope that gives some sense of it. And I really encourage people to think about their show reels very carefully. I mean, I'm sure you do as an agent, that's your advice, but you know, bear in mind your first 20 seconds are essential. They've got to be really good. There's no point in boring anybody, because what any director or casting director, when they're sifting through show reels, they're just looking for the reason to say no, because they've got so many to look through. So make sure it's bloody good. Would be my.
Well, just on that, we have actors, you know, who obviously have an acting show reel, but they also have a motion capture show reel. Are there any specific things that they should have in that reel? You know, is it just a case of going, here's a scene that I did in motion capture training, you know, here's an example, so it can show that I've done the training, or are you looking for a certain type of performance, or do you want to see, you know, if somebody can do parkour, do you want to see them doing flips and things, or do you think it's better just to have more of a performance reel?
I think going back to Paul's point, you do what you're good at, show what you're good at. So for example, if you're brilliant at parkour, have a parkour show reel, because when I am casting a game where I need a parkour performer, I'm going to go and look for that. You know what I mean? So I think go with what you're good at. Don't make it look like it's a training thing. Make it look like these scenes are really fully committed. If you are a serious you know, if you're a serious method or TV or film actor, then let's see your best work, because that's going to speak for itself. I don't think that anyone should be trying to please. It's about going, I'm bloody good at this, and I'm going to show you how good I am. I think that's really important. Generally for mocap, for animators, what they want to know is, does your gesture, does your full body gesture, is it going to be truthful? And seeing sort of mid shots and close-ups, or a soap type performance, or a kind of, you know, very televisual, very sort of that kind of, that might not show you off in the best way. But ultimately, the most important thing with the show reel is put your stuff where you look the best and you act the best, because, you know, as a director, you're looking at it, you're going, I want to see some great performance here. I think that's really important. You shouldn't be thinking about pleasing. You should be thinking about, how do I show how good I am?
Yeah, you mentioned there about the community around motion capture. Is that quite hard to break into? I mean, I know a lot of actors who've done the training and are ready to go, but they feel like they just don't get a break, because production companies tend to use the same reliable people over and over again, because they know that they can get what they want from it. Do you find it quite hard for actors to break into?
Look, to a degree, it's as hard to break into as film and television and theatre is, I feel, because in the same way there are, you know, producers, directors that have worked with actors before and go, I know I've got a good rapport with them, I'll use them on my next project. But in motion capture, because its breadth within the industry is still growing exponentially, those regular performers that have worked with the directors before, they're going to be working on other projects. So there will be more opportunity. You know, getting your lucky big break is just being as prepared as you can be in the right time at the right place. So is it a tight-knit community? Yeah. Is it any tighter knit than film, television, or theatre? I don't think so, personally.
And just, you know, and also, this is hopefully a story of hope, Jamie. I'm working on, I worked on a game, admittedly it was in the US. I don't think anyone I chose had done mocap before out of the main characters I chose. Maybe one of them had, but we chose them because they were good. We went through a casting director and we got blooming good actors, and we worked on Zoom. We did some casting sessions on Zoom with them, and they were great. I'm just working on a game in the UK at the moment with Sabre Interactive, and let me think now. Again, a handful of actors. I'm not sure whether any of them have got mocap experience before. It's so long ago that I cast them. I'm just trying to remember. But, you know, it's about their physicality was right, because these are quite big characters. Their voices were right. The show reels were good. And then we saw them, you know, it's not particularly a community as such. I mean, I'm making it sound like it's more of a clique than it is. It used to be that, but I don't think it is anymore. I think it's really growing.
That's good. Yeah, that's positive. Excellent. Right, I've got another question here from one of our members. What percentage of actors who do the Mocap Vaults training get through to level 4? And how long does that take to get through all the levels? So if if you've got actors starting at level 1, do they all make it to level 4, or do quite a big dropout rate?
The first thing to say is that as I said before, it's not a course. It's more of we go, try this, see if you like it. Then we're going to give you a more in-depth class on character. Then we're going to give you a more in-depth. It's incrementally more difficult,
right?
Which means that people drop out because they understand that maybe that's not for them, or maybe they're not ready for it, or because we're quite demanding, I think, and I think we should be, because we're not kidding anybody here. We want people to understand that it is demanding, but it's also immensely rewarding if you can crack it. It's probably going to take you at least a year, I'd say, to do all of our stages, and as we progress through the classes, as we move up the scale, get less frequent because of that kind of drop off, and because people think maybe I need to go away and think about that side of my work. So I can't give you a specific proportion, but we're talking about doing 1 to 2 enter the volume classes a year, which is either 12 or 24 students. We were really screwed by the pandemic. We couldn't do our sort of final level classes for a long time, so we're still trying to catch up with the backlog, I'll be honest. But we did an enter the volume last year. We're hoping to do another one this year. We may do 2, but the other thing that's important for us to impress is that we don't just want to promise people that they'll go through. We want to be honest with them and say, we think you're ready for this now. And so, it's tough. It's tough because we can't just say to everybody, you'll do all of the levels, because some people, to be honest, and I think they get the feeling, they go, maybe I'm not ready for this. We've had people come to the cinematics class and go, oh my God, I've really been exposed, because it's very exposing with a mocap suit in an imaginary environment doing your stuff, and a director going, no, I don't quite believe that, you are about to be attacked by a dragon, or whatever the scenario is. It's hard, Jamie. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. It's tough. So it's quite revealing of people's, where they're at. And for that reason, I guess, Paul, am I being fair here? I think it's not easy.
As we often say, it requires a real flexing of the imaginative muscle to make it work. Because if you don't believe that your character is in that environment, and if you don't believe that your character is wearing those costumes or whatever it is, if you don't believe that when you look at that other actor, you see the person in a spacesuit, or whatever the imaginary scenario is, then it's not going to be convincing. If you're on a film set, you've got your costume, you're in the world of that character. Yes, there are cameras and lights around, but they build the world for you. But in a motion capture studio, you have to build it in your imagination. And outside of that, you might have a bit of masking tape and a few boxes on the floor, and that's all you get to help your imagination bring that world to life. Yeah, and that's why it's so challenging, because you've got to practice, you've got to grow that muscle of imagination to be able to use it in such a way.
And Jamie, speaking of the mocap community, there are other training alternatives, and I don't want people to think that we're the only one. We are more focused on actors' performance, and we're probably more focused on kind of cinematics. Ace Ruel, who runs a company called Creature Bionics, he will work on things like arm extensions and creating creatures. So, if you want to go down that road, there's someone like Ace, who's great. There's also other companies that work in, more with creatures and physicality. There are different places you can train. We do a specific thing, really, which is get people ready to work mainly in cinematic scenes, as in dramatic narrative storytelling beats within games. So that's kind of what we specialize in. So not everyone wants to do that. That's the other thing to remember. It may well be that you come to our intro class and go, yeah, I really like that element of it, but maybe I want to get more into locomotion and the thing that Paul was talking earlier on about, i.e. the in-game animations of a game. Or maybe they go, actually, I really want to focus on working with stunts, but I've got some good signposts now to think about the work I might need to do in improv or by the way, improv's a really good skill to have for mocap, because quite often you'll get to a studio and it'll be like, right, we're doing this today, and you really didn't expect to be asked to do that, and you may well be told, and this is the environment and this is the costume, and suddenly, it's like Paul often describes it, it's like you're in the playground again. So it's there's a lot of those kind of skills that I think people realize, oh, maybe I need to go and brush up on my improv, or maybe I need to brush up on my kind of character creation skills, those things. And there's a lot to it. There's a lot more to it, I think, than many people think.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, cool. Well, we'll finish on the question that we ask all our guests. This is for both of you. What, if you could change one thing about the industry, what would it be and why?
Yeah, I've got that one straight away. It would be that motion capture performers get the same recognition that voice performers do in the way that they contribute to a role. Often in a game's credits, a character will be listed as the voice actor, and don't get me wrong, I'm not by any stretch playing down the importance of a character's voice, and voice acting is an incredibly difficult skill to master. But so is the physicality of a character as well. And often the physical performer that might contribute to the life of that character will spend more time working on that character than a voice actor does. And they will often just get credited as additional motion capture performer or something like that. So it's in the credits, and still to a degree in the entertainment industry, there's not the same recognition for the contribution that physical performers make to a character's end story.
Cool. John, how about you? What if you could change one thing about the industry?
Well, it's a complicated answer really to a simple question, I suppose, but I like the fact that the industry is becoming more accessible, and I like the fact that the technology is becoming cheaper, and I would like to see that reflected more in the breadth of genres and the types of games that are being made. So at the moment, games seem to me to be kind of thrillers, horrors, the genres are quite kind of, the stakes are high. I would love to see some more in-depth, psychologically deep, more complex, the kind of movie I like to go and see, sort of indie type movies, or at least sort of psychologically complex films. And I'd love that to be where I could work in games as well. I mean, I've just been working for a games developer recently on a new IP, on new intellectual property, which is really interesting, and I think there's some real depth to it, and so I'm excited to see that kind of thing happening. So I'm hoping there is more of that, and I think there will be. I'm pretty optimistic about it. So yeah, I'd like to see the ambition, the artistic ambition, really being pushed forward, and I suppose that's why I'm excited about the industry. Really, I really want to be at that, working on those kind of games.
And I think as the technology becomes more accessible to indie developers, we're going to see exactly that, John. I think we will get a diversification of storytelling as new creatives get hold of this technology and learn how to use it, and start producing their own content.
Because just in the way that, really good theatre and really good film and really good TV can change the world. I mean, I know I'm being slightly kind of idealistic here, but, I believe in the power of entertainment media to actually ask really important questions. I would like games to do the same thing. So that for me would be the really exciting thing. If we can start making games that really asks important questions, politically, spiritually, psychologically, that would be really great. And I think it's starting to happen, like Paul said, just that, there's a lot of commerciality in games. I'd like to see some games which felt like they really had their hearts on their sleeves a bit more.
Yeah. Fantastic. Excellent. Well, guys, that's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for coming along and explaining and demystifying the mocap side of the industry. Thank
Jamie,
you so
I've got something else I think we should talk about.
Yeah, okay, good. Go for it.
So one of the things that you asked in your questions, I think, was about voice versus body. Could voice performers move into mocap? And one thing to bear in mind about motion capture as an animated medium is that animation tends to be driven by voice, i.e. you start with voice and then you animate to voice, which is how kind of the industry generally operates. And so what's challenging, I think, for motion capture performers generally and performance capture performers is that the industry still values voice more than it values body, which is why voice actors get paid a lot per hour, and motion capture performers get paid by the day, and they generally get paid significantly less. And I think it's kind of important to tease that out a bit and understand why it is that voice performers get paid a certain amount, and their skills are very much about hearing that voice. And why we found initially when we started, we got quite a lot of voice performers coming to our classes who kind of expected, I think, because they understood how games worked, to be able to segue into doing body as well. But it became clear to them, I think, quite soon that actually, you know, physical, gestural, corporeal, full embodiment of a character is hard, you know, and actually it's quite a different skill set. So I sort of think it's quite important to sort of tease out the differences between them and to understand that sometimes your voice is not required, and there's either a Hollywood actor somewhere else doing voice because they're the ones being paid lots of money, and you're in a cold studio somewhere acting to their body, or increasingly there is voice and body being done at the same time, as Paul's just described, performance capture. But in that case, then you've got to be good at both. And because it's an animated medium, and because everything is scrutinized in a different kind of way than it would be on stage and screen, you know, your voice has to fit body. And it's, I don't know, Paul, am I describing it right? The kind of...
Yeah, you are. And at the end of the day as well, because it is an animated medium, the animators have the ability to change a physical performer's performance much more than they can change a voice actor's vocal performance. They can, you know, they don't like the position of your arm in that movement, they can move your arm somewhere else. There's a lot of scope for cleanup in post filming. So yeah, I think also the voices are more recognizable, which is why you get so, like, it's becoming much more common now that you get big name stars being attached to video game projects that they might not have been willing to do 10, 15 years ago. Because they can, you know, the developers can book a big name, put them in a sound booth for a few days, and then they'll get someone else to play their body over the next couple of years while the game is in development, where the audience will recognize the actor's voice. Then very unlikely to look at someone's physical movement patterns and go, oh, I know exactly who that physical actor is.
Yeah, and do you think there's that element of star power there as well? Do you think, you know, that having a big name Hollywood actor doing the vocal part of a character in a game helps to sell the game better as it does with TV and film? Or
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, it does. Does that mean that those roles should only go to the big names? No, of course not. But that's sort of above my pay grade to be in control of, unfortunately. There are some amazing actors out there that are incredibly gifted in physical storytelling and vocal performance as well, that I would love to see get more work. And like I say, it's just being as prepared as you can be and be at the right place at the right time. That's what luck is. It's being prepared.
There it is.
Excellent. And Jamie, can I just say something? You might say no to this. Am I allowed to plug my book?
Of course you are. Yeah, 100%. Right. Yeah.
Right. Oh my God, it's going. The focus is going. It's all really bad, isn't it? So can you see that?
There it is. Performing for Motion Capture by John Dower.
There you go. I co-wrote it with our head of operations in Canada, Pascal Langdale. So it's written by an actor and a director. But we also interviewed people working in mocap all over the world. We did this during lockdown. Paul is interviewed. So Paul is in it too. I think it's worth having a look at anyway. You can look at it on Amazon, look at the first few pages and just get an idea of whether you're into it. But it gives you a sort of, the aim of it is because, again, there are not many books or, you know, much information about working in motion capture. we thought there was a gap, and Methuen Drama agreed. So we wrote that under lockdown, and we figured that what actors are really missing is a kind of understanding of why it is that in this animated medium they're asked to do some weird stuff. Basically, you are. It's quite weird when you first start working in it. It certainly was for me as a director. I took a while to find my feet. So yeah, if you're interested, maybe that's where to start. Have a look at a book. It's also on Audible. It's also, you can ebooks, etc. So maybe worth having a look at that, and then sort of deciding whether that sounds like something for you.
And hopefully the likes of these books and the access to that side of the industry through doing podcasts, through getting the information out there, will open it up and make it a little bit more accessible to more people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, guys, that's been absolutely brilliant. So insightful. And I know that our members are going to absolutely love listening to this. So thank you very much for your time. It's been great. And I will direct as many actors as I can in the way of the Mocap Vaults. If they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Go on the website, the Mocap Vaults website, and go to the contact page and express your interest, and we'll put you on the mailing list. We're also on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So you can send a message on Instagram, and I will get that. I run the social media side. Facebook, similarly, just contact us. There's various ways to do that, and then follow us, and then yeah, it'd be great. We would really welcome you to come and try it out. It's an amazing medium. I never thought that I'd be doing something like this, and here I am. An old film director working in motion capture, and it just feels so exciting. It's changing so fast as well as a technology. It's really, really, really amazing medium to be working in.
Fantastic. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, guys. We'll speak to you again soon.
Pleasure.
Cheers, Jamie.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.